We're going to see God this morning, if it's the last thing we do. The good news is that because God is everywhere and in everything, shouldn't be hard to find. Isn't that true? I mean, just think about that. If God is in everything and is everywhere, God shouldn't be hard to find. So we've been talking about this idea of seeing. We've got our On Seeing logo, and we've been talking about this from several different points of view. But really, the common thread in all of this is really that we're seeing God in everything and everywhere, sometimes in the surprising ways. And that sometimes it's because we're not looking quite the right way, or that we're seeing things that we've seen before so many times that we've gotten used to them, that we no longer sense the wonder and the mystery and the awe in them. But I want us to kind of take a step back because I want us to look both at this idea of seeing and the idea of God. Because, seeing is only one of the ways that we perceive. And if you can see, that's a good thing. If you can't see, then obviously you're going to be using other ways of sensing and receiving. We might smell God. We might hear God. We might taste God. We might have those weird experiences that we have in our bodies that we don't really know exactly where they come from, and that can be God too. And even just to take that word God, one of the challenges of that name is that the name creates location, and it actually creates location outside of ourselves. So there's a little bit of a sense that if we're going to see God, I'm going to be someplace, God is going to be someplace else. But just think a little bit about any of those sensations, about those sensory processes, seeing or hearing or tasting or smelling. Those are not processes that end at the edge of our bodies or just at the object. Actually, to see, to hear, to taste, to smell, first of all, is a process that's moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Till actually, you don't know what is the back or the forth. And that censoring process doesn't end here at the edge of our bodies. It actually is going all the way in. Those light rays, when we're seeing, are hitting off the back of our eyes. They're exciting parts of our brain. They're sending sensations to parts of our bodies. So again, it's not just something that happens here at the edge. It's a process that we can't even kind of capture in language. What we have is experience. We have experience. Now, I have a question for you. How many of you at some point or another, maybe even recently, feel like you've had an experience of awe? Just raise your hand if you feel like you do. Yeah, most people. But I really don't know, Freddie, if the experience you're having, when you're having an experience of awe, is the same as my experience. This is one of the interesting things about personal experience, is that we think we have common understanding, and we might, but there is no way for us to know exactly whether the experience I'm having is exactly the same as yours. So I could say to you, well, here's how you know you're having an experience of awe. It will go boom, 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 boom. If it satisfies all 7 of those requirements, you're good to go. But that's not the way it works. But yet this experience has been described enough, probably experienced enough in us. It's a common enough experience that we trust that what we're experiencing is probably quite similar to what other people experience. So if we use the word awe, for example, we probably have a fairly high level of common experience, but we don't really know. If we just pay attention to that experience, though, of awe, we can then think of some of the things that create a sense of awe. And I think, personally, that awe, this experience we describe as awe, we call awe, is really only one of a whole bunch of different sorts of God experiences. We might talk about wonder, we might talk about surprise, we might talk about gratitude, we might talk about grace, we might talk about, we could probably make a big long list. But we're just going to look for a minute at this experience of awe. So I just have a question for you. What were you doing where were you? Who were you with that created that sense of awe? So what are some of the experiences that you have that you feel have created awe in you? Can you just call out some things? Yeah.
Being at the Warriors games.
Yes, being at the Warriors game. Presumably the one that we won. Yeah, what else?
Wildflowers, seeing wildflowers on a hike in Point Mary. I was with Cynthia.
Yes, seeing wildflowers, great.
Music.
Music, Music, Yeah, yeah, here Friday night. Stillness,
Meeting my neighbor's newborn baby.
Newborn baby, yeah.
Feeling my baby kicking.
Yeah, feeling a baby thing. Remembering your parents.
When the Spirit made Rowan stand up and pray last week.
Yes, when Rowan prayed last week. Hiking on Mount Tam.
The night sky.
The night sky.
Listening to owls.
Listening to owls.
Turning a bend in my car and then seeing a huge new view that I didn't see before.
Yeah.
Looking in the mirror and seeing my mother.
Yes. Yeah.
Seeing the moon last night.
Seeing the moon last night, yes, it was beautiful. So you notice the things that people are describing, some of them are quite big and grand and some are quite simple. And I just believe that this is a process of noticing. In the interplay system, some of you know that I teach this thing called interplay, and we have 7, no 8 interplay tools. We started with 7, and we added 1, and you know how that goes. But anyway, one of them has to do, we call it body data, body knowledge, and body wisdom. So body data are just the bits and pieces of experience that we have as we go through the world, kind of in the moment. Awe might be an experience that we would have. You might be having that experience right now. You might be having other sorts of experiences in this particular moment. That is body data, the bits and pieces of information. Body knowledge is the patterns that we notice in our information. So for example, if you notice that a certain thing created an experience of awe in you, not just right now or yesterday, but also 3 weeks ago or 4 years ago or whatever length of time, if you kind of notice that music is something that continually creates a sense of awe, or being with babies creates a sense of awe, or being in nature creates a sense of awe, that is body knowledge, noticing the patterns of the information. Body wisdom is the ability to notice the data, to see the patterns, and then to make choices that are in line with the data and the knowledge. And to put those things together, to notice that, okay, if I know what this experience feels like, and I know the things that create it for me, I might choose to have more of that, or just to notice it more. Now, when we teach these 7 or 8 core ideas, we have some shorthands for it. And for the shorthand for this one is notice, notice, notice. Notice, notice, notice. Last weekend I was in Seattle, and so there was this interesting convergence of a couple of things. I was in a new place, a different place. I mean, I've been to Seattle before, but I was in a different place than my normal routine. And I was also in the middle of looking at this question of seeing God, because that was my job this morning, to get us to see God. And I'm always on the job, of course. I just want you to know that even when I'm traveling, I'm on the job. You're getting your money's worth. So, and I just noticed, it was incredible, the number of experiences that I had over that weekend. They're just layers and layers and layers and layers of experiencing the wonder and awe that I consider to be my God experience. Big things, little things. So even as we were flying up, it was a clear day. We saw Mount Shasta. We were on the right side of the plane. We saw Mount Shasta. We saw Mount Rainier, we saw the Three Sisters. And you know, Rainier, you can go to Seattle like 20 times and never see that mountain. We saw that going on the way up. The weekend was a lot about connecting with old friends, people that I've had long relationships over a number of years. Friday night was an incredible choir concert. It's a beautiful group of 30 voices and a quartet of string instruments who were singing a brand new piece that was commissioned by one of my interplay friends from Santa Fe that included words to a piece that I'd written years ago. So there were 30 people singing my words at the top of their voices, both in harmony and dissonance, surrounded by my interplay friends who had come to witness this for my friend and I. Saturday, we made it a point to not schedule the weekend too much. So on Saturday, we actually had a chance to be tourists in Seattle, which is not very true. And one of the things that we went to do was to go see the Glass Garden. The Dale Chihuly, this is Dale Chihuly's work, who's a glass artist. And there's a place called the Glass Garden, and there's both a house, a museum section with his work, and then also a garden where his pieces are displayed. And wild. His work is just wild and over the top. You can't be in it without having a sense of, oh my God. This is hanging overhead, just hundreds of these pieces that are like this big, pieces of glass hanging above, like flower petals. And then in the garden portion, they have these pieces of glass interspersed with flowers that kind of go with the glass. So they've shaped this garden so that there's this relationship between the natural and this artistic work. And one more picture of that. So you'd go in one section, it would be mostly oranges, another section would be mostly blues and orange. As an artist, this was just driving me. And I started to notice that for me, I can find these experiences of awe in the natural, in the kind of the unshaped natural world. Sometimes we think in order to get an experience of awe, we have to go to the mountain, and that is a good place to go. But we have the unshaped kind of raw nature around us to experience. And then we have the things that we've created as human beings, which are sometimes just as wonderful and wild and inspiring and moving. And then we have these places in between, kind of the shaped natural world, where there's this interplay between how we've set things up with order or color or design or juxtaposition or contrast or whatever it is that gives us that sense of inner satisfaction or awe, perhaps. And over the course of the weekend, it was just like that, just seeing over and over again the wonder, the amazement, whether it was something as grand as this artwork or something as simple as these long-term relationships that I got to be right in the middle of. It's everywhere. It is simply everywhere for us to see. Now, if you're having a good day, it may be easier than if you're not. And I just want to acknowledge that this may be one of the challenges of life, is that when we're in challenging situations, it's often difficult to pick out those pieces that bring us awe or satisfaction or joy, which is all the more reason to practice it on good days. It's a practice. If we pay attention on the days when we have the time and the energy and the focus and the will and the desire to do that, then when it's more of a challenge, perhaps we will be able to summon that muscle up that allows us to see awe, wonder, mystery, even in the challenging times. Just look around. This is like a garden, isn't it? Beautiful garden that is not only of today, but it's of yesterday and 10 years ago and 20 years ago. It's of the future. It's of next week, next year, of a time that some of us won't even get to, but others will. God is everywhere and in everything. You, all of you. Amen.